Hi, my name is Mark Boleen, and I am creating this video to introduce people to my Learning to Read with Phonograms reading CD. I put this together after teaching first grade and then having my own children and teaching them to learn to read. So with both first grade and with my own kids, I use the phonograms, and I feel they are of great value and want to pass that on to parents so they can use it with their own children just like I did. When my first child was young, around 3, I started thinking about teaching her to read early, because I was first grade teacher, wanted to get her an early start, and therefore had researched a number of different ways of teaching her to read, including Hooked on Phonics, which I thought was entirely too expensive and wasn't sure it really had the value that I was looking for. Also came across a reference to something that used to run in the Chicago newspaper, but could never find anything on that. So what I ended up doing was using the phonograms that I started using in my classroom and taught her to read very successfully. Now my second child came along 3 years later, and when it was time to teach him how to read, he was much less willing, I guess would be one way to put it. So I had to become much more structured in the way I did it, and there are 70 phonograms. After trying to just teach him to read using the phonograms the same way I had with Lauren, which was just more, to continue to learn and teach him as we went along, I had to break it down into groups of 4 is what I finally did. There were 70 phonograms. I started doing them in groups of 4. And that's really what led into me creating a CD with 18 lessons, mostly 4 per lesson. As I mentioned before, I believe these phonograms are very useful for teaching children how to read. And both my children became very good readers. People, when they would, especially family, when they would see how my children read, pretty much said, well, you were a first grade teacher, so you know how to teach them how to read. I decided that I would go ahead and create this program and put it on a CD and make that available to anyone who wanted to teach their own children how to read just like I did. And as it turns out, the CD that I created has much more detail, is much more regimented than how I taught my own children how to read, even with what I mentioned about my second child. So that's what I'll start showing you now and introduce you to the program. So as I've mentioned a couple of times, there are 70 phonograms. You're looking at a screenshot from lesson 18 on the CD. It has all 70 phonograms. You'll notice that the last 4 are a different shade. On each lesson you'll get a picture of all the phonograms that your child have learned so far, so they can see as they progress through. And this, like I said, is lesson 18. Those are all the phonograms that your child will have learned by then, and all the different sounds that each one of them has, and we'll go through some of that here in just a few minutes. But I also highlighted the phonogram EIGH, that is A, 4-letter A, and the reason I did that is because this program helps children to understand that letters work together to make sounds. And so, for instance, the word way. In this program, a child will see that as W and A, or way. And when I taught first grade prior to using the phonograms, this was really difficult for children to sound out. The only choice they had was to memorize it. And then, so that also leads into wait. So that's 3 phonograms, W, A, 4-letter A, as highlighted here, and then a T on the end, T, W, A, T. And children learn to read so much better. This is just one example of many, many, many different ways that children can see and understand that words are made up of parts. Here we're looking at the Lesson 1 menu, and each one of the 18 lessons will have a menu that have these headings. First, in each lesson I've written an essay covering some topic related to education or reading specifically. The next heading is phonograms, and this is where you are introduced to the phonograms from this lesson, and I'm going to cover that page here in just a moment. Also, on each lesson I've included some activities that you can do with your child, just some basic suggestions. Then the next one is words to sound out. Now this one I think is an excellent component of each lesson, because what happens on this section is that the phonograms are introduced, the sound is made for each one of those phonograms to create a word, and then the phonograms are blended together to create that word. So basically what this is modeling how your child will use the phonograms to sound out words. And then finally, as we saw on lesson 18, there will be a list of phonograms that your child has learned so far, just to show them how far they're coming and how much they're learning, which I believe is of great value for them to see each and every lesson. This is a lesson 1 phonograms page where the phonograms are introduced both through text, as you can see here, as well as sound through utilization of the play button. Each of the 18 lessons will introduce their phonograms here, and we'll have the opportunity to play the sounds. So the first phonogram that will come up is the letter A, and there are 3 sounds for A: A, and ah. And there are sample words for each of the phonograms. So if there are multiple phonograms, then there will be multiple words with the corresponding sound underlined. So this gives parents a way to understand what those sounds should be based on words that they're familiar with. There will also be, if necessary, some notes for phonograms that will need it. Basically helping parents to understand how the sound should be made. When you press on the play button, you'll hear the sound or sounds of the phonograms, and then there will be an opportunity to replay those as many times as you would like. I encourage parents to use this and then pass the sounds on to the children, but your child can sit with you and listen to those sounds as well. I mentioned earlier when discussing the menu page, the words to sound out section. You're going to be shown how that works now. Basically, the phonograms come onto the page with the corresponding sound. Then the sounds are blended together to make a word. So again, it's modeling how your child will sound out phonograms to blend them together and make new words. This is done in every lesson, so all phonograms are covered. The only difference is when we get to the multiple letter phonograms, when they come in on the first lesson where they're introduced, they'll be a different color, so your child can recognize that and see that the multiple letters together make one sound, which is very valuable for children to understand when they're learning to read. So I'll jump out of the way here, and you can see how this works.
D, A, G, dog.
This is modeled almost 70 times, actually 70 times in this program, and is really invaluable. The only difference between this and the actual program is that the program moves a little quicker. It's more of a blend. Here the sounds are more separated. So again, this is just an excellent thing for your child to do, to begin to understand how they can use the phonograms to read and understand new words. Alright, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the Learning to Read with Phonograms program with you. You can get much more information at the website, which is www.boleen-ed.com. There's more information about the reading program, as well as some other resources that are available for you. Again, thank you.